welcome to Broken Entertainment. Today we're going to talk about the idea of crowdfunding your self-publishing book. We all know that self-publishing is a very expensive option. If you want to do it the most, we'll call it the closest to traditional way possible, i.e., you need to hire a cover design artist, you would need to go out and hire a editor for line edits, you would need to hire an editor for content, and you would need to find various platforms. You might, if you want to do an audiobook, you'd have to pay for the people to do the audiobook. Depending on what service you use, you may have to pay for printing. If you use services like Amazon, you don't have to. They'll just, whenever somebody orders a book, they print it, and it comes out of your percentage. So the costs quickly add up into the thousands of dollars range. So a lot of people who self-publish don't do all those options because they can't afford it, or they don't want to have to pay all that money. And then on top of that, once you publish it, you don't know if it's going to be successful or not. And how do you define success? Well, if you've spent thousands of dollars, you define success as at least making back what you spent. And it'll take time. You have to build up an audience and so on. You may have to publish several books before you make any money back. So crowdfunding is an option. It's not one we hear about very often. You hear about it a lot with comics, you hear about it a lot with other projects, but you don't really hear about it that much with self-publishing. And it's something I've been considering for a long time, and I did a little bit of research online, and you get articles on it, like this one that we're going to go into in a minute. Most of them are older. There's just not a whole lot of buzz about it in the self-publishing community because it's kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around, right? If you sell comics, like let's say you're in Comicsgate and you're going to sell a comic on Indiegogo, well, you know, you're going to have variant covers, you're going to have bookmarks, you're going to have trading cards, you're going to have all these things that can be unlocked. With it, it all seems very obvious. With a book, it's a little different. What do you do? You know, there are options, and we'll go over that a little bit, but just conceptually, it's one of those things that strikes people as like, okay, well, how do I even, set up crowdfunding? What do I offer to sell? Especially because then hopefully when the campaign ends, you're going to turn around and put that book up on Amazon, right? So now you're selling something that you're going to sell again. So you have to come up with options. So it's just not something that comes up very often. But let's go ahead and get into this article, and then I want to go over some evidence that it does work. So this is why an author should crowdfund. It's on a business financing site. This was written in 2019. This is the newest one I found without doing a deep dive. Authors are getting in on the crowdfunding game. Crowdfunding provides a good alternative to the existing options for authors. Consider going the traditional route of getting a publisher. There are way too many writers seeking literary advances, and even if you land one, the average advance and the average support given to an author from a publisher are both shrinking. Accurate. Also, if you get a advance and you don't make that advance, so let's say they give you $10,000 and your book doesn't sell $10,000, there's a good chance they're not going to publish your next one. And unfortunately, they now own rights to that IP. So if you were intending to do a series now, you effectively can't. Then it says, sure, you can take self-publishing route, but that's a gamble. You write your book and launch it into the ether with no idea how it will perform. If you're printing hard copies, that means you, as the author, take on the cost of printing, without the faintest idea of whether your next magnum opus will sell. That's not really true. A lot of services that do actual printing, like Amazon, don't charge you up front, so you don't have to go and say publish and print 500 copies of a book. You just load it on Amazon, and then when somebody buys it, Amazon prints it, and they charge the printing fee out of your income. But yeah, in some other services you do have to pay it, but it's not true to say that you absolutely have to. It's a very shallow view of how that system works. Enter crowdfunding. It's like pre-selling your book with the added advantage of building a fan base as you do it. The founder of Upbound, a UK-based platform for authors, described crowdfunding books like this. Other users love to be involved in the process and have critical tastes. They are not passive consumers, they are micro-patrons. Absolutely. And we see this in comics as well. It's not just in publishing a book. Anything you do gets the consumer involved at the crowdfunding level. And it's a really good way to drum up excitement, not just for your book, but for you. And it can build a fan base so that next time you go to make a book, you have people eagerly waiting for it. So that gives a list of top sites crowdfunding your next book. PubSlush, I went there, doesn't exist anymore. Unbound, that does still exist, but it looks like it's a mostly UK or UK only thing. Then it's got Indiegogo and Kickstarter. So, to me, if you're going to self-publish a book, you need to use Indiegogo. And throwing aside politics and the various reasons I don't like Kickstarter, the reason I say Indiegogo is Indiegogo does not require you to be fully funded to get your money. Indiegogo requires you to... You can set it up that way if you want, but otherwise, it makes it known to your customers that you are going to get the money whether or not it's funded. You can, of course, choose to give everybody their money back, but one of the advantages of it, especially if you're up front, is, okay, let's say you launch a campaign and you need $4,000 to publish a book. Well, if you get $2,000, then you can go, you're not looking at coming up with the $4,000 on your own anymore. You can go, well, I need to come up with $2,000, but that's a lot easier than $4,000. So you might say, okay, I'm going to send a letter to my customers and say, I'm going to go ahead and take the funds, and I'm going to publish this book. It might take a little bit longer because I have to get the rest of the money, and then you can go ahead and update them periodically through the in-demand store. Whereas Kickstarter, if you don't make the money that you need, you automatically fail and you get none of it. With Indiegogo, you can say, all right, here's what I'm going to do, and then if you make half or a little bit more, was about the threshold I'd put it at, you can say, all right, I'm going to use this money, and I'm going to come up with the rest and go ahead and publish it. So it's a much easier method of publishing your work through crowdfunding if it doesn't get fully funded. And it's something you have to consider, that fully funded may not happen. You may have to do several campaigns before you get one that gets fully funded. You know, launching a crowdfunding campaign is not an easy thing to do, and it's something you need at least some people that are already interested in it that will go there. And I don't mean, by some people, I don't mean your family. Your family's great, and if they want to support it, that's great. But you're going to need more than that. Unless someone just drops $4,000. But... or what have you. But this is, to me, absolutely an option. And if you look at They have a whole section dedicated on Indiegogo to writing and publishing. These are all projects that are being crowdfunded or have been crowdfunded. Some of them are fiction, some of them are non-fiction. Some of them have worked, some of them haven't. But it's obviously doable. I mean, look at it. Here's $5,000. $5,000. A little over 2. This one's going. This one's ongoing. So you see, this is doable. And it's really, if you're thinking about self-publishing, it is absolutely an option you should consider. Crowdfunding is not for everybody, but I want people to be aware that it is an option because you don't see it talked about much, unfortunately. You know, almost everyone is basically, oh, I see you're going to self-publish. Oh, okay. You know, unfortunately, self-publishing has a stigma. Low quality. People who can't make it in the traditional publishing market. Well, there are a lot of reasons people can choose to self-publish that have nothing to do with the traditional publishing market, or have everything to do with the traditional publishing market in the sense that you don't like it. There are authors on YouTube who are self-published who worked in the traditional publishing industry and chose to self-publish. And if you're one of those people, like many people who doesn't have the money to go ahead and fund your own book without saving up over years or what have you, then please consider crowdfunding. Go to Indiegogo. I wouldn't even bother with Unbound. I wouldn't bother with Kickstarter. Indiegogo's got a big crowd, as you can see. You know, this is just scrolling through, of course. And this is one of the projects that's up, so we can go over one of the things people offer. Okay, because one of the reasons, like I said, that a lot of people struggle to come up with crowdfunding as an option is, okay, well, what do you give people? So, they do $15. There's an ebook. That's I've looked at several of these, and that is pretty much ubiquitous. You get the cheapest option as an ebook. I think that's a great idea. Most people who self-publish are going to do an ebook, whether or not they do a hardcover or a softcover book. So if you're going to do it anyway, you might as well. The thing I would suggest here, since you're going to hopefully turn around and then sell it on the traditional market, you want to, and by traditional market I mean like Amazon or what have you, either give them something more with this or make it cheaper than your ebook's going to be and give it to them sooner. Newsletter package, ebook, and members only newsletter. I don't think newsletters sell anything. Hopefully as an author you may be doing a newsletter anyway. Don't charge people for it. This one is signed paperback. And you also receive the ebook and monthly newsletter. So, and you'll see that a lot too in both comics and novels. If you, as you start to go up, you give them the ebook, just becomes part of every other package, which is great. Gives people an option that they can carry with them if they don't want to take a book somewhere. And it feels like they're getting something for free, because they are. Hardcover. And then a character for the novel illustrated. That's a good idea. Character for the novel illustrated by an award-winning artist. So yeah, if you know a good artist, that's one thing you could do. Visionary package, 5 illustrations, signed hardcover edition, members only newsletter, ebook. So you get the idea. One thing I don't see is the signed acknowledgement in the book. That's another one that's very popular. For the higher levels is you get book acknowledgments, and then you can go up higher than that, and a lot of authors I've seen do a option where you get all this stuff plus your name is used for a character, or you're inserted as a background character somewhere. It's very popular in comics to do. It's just a background, like one-shot character in the background somewhere. You can do that in a book too. It's not that difficult. 10 hardcover. So this guy basically looked at comics and did the same thing. Because this is virtual book talk, acknowledgement in the book, members only newsletter, ebook. So it's everything that came before, plus 10 hardcover editions, 10 signed illustrations. A lot of people will do that to either give to friends and family or to go ahead and sell, which is fine. It's not something you're likely to sell a lot of, but it's an option. But I just wanted to show you that there are a lot of options out there. It's not an impossible to wrap your head around kind of scenario. Look at novels that are doing it, look at comics that are doing it, and see what they do. Think if we look at any others, you're going to see something similar. I want to make sure we're looking at fiction, because nonfiction is a bit of a different animal. Let's see. One thing I see a lot of these, and the other thing you should do too, if you consider this option, is go through and look at the successful ones and what they did, but also look at the ones that failed and see if you can figure out why they failed. Let's see. There's a lot of kids' books that come on here. See, this looks like it's fiction. Yeah, mystery. There we go. Standard edition with a bookmark. Oh, yeah, that was left out of the other one. Very good idea, especially for book readers. Bookmarks, either with your logo or something cool on it like that, or character art. They cost a little bit more, but they're just a neat thing to be able to have. And you can make it as a stretch goal. Standard edition, bookmark, digital short. That's pretty good value for 20. Bookmark, limited edition, digital short. Standard edition, second edition, you get the idea. Looks like starting to get all kinds of other stuff in there. But yeah, absolutely valid idea. It's definitely one I am considering doing. Even if you can afford all the costs of self-publishing, I would suggest it anyway, because it helps you to build excitement for the book and build a built-in fan base. And don't underestimate the power of having that fan base, because they're going to go out and tell other people and spread the word that way. And those other people might not buy it then, but they might buy it when they see it on Amazon or what have you. It's not a must to crowdfund, but it's definitely an option, especially if you're wanting to go out that extra professional mile and go ahead and pay for a professional cover artist and professional editors and so on. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider. And I would suggest looking into it. Let me put it that way. Because especially if you're just the early stages of considering self-publishing, it is very expensive. if there's a way to alleviate costs and build excitement, grab onto it. It's it's a scary thing. You got to do a lot of research, figure out what works and what doesn't. Try to build a platform on social media if you can before you do it. So if you like the video, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.